So a little bit of background. I'm Stuart. I'm from Random International. We work in SW6 in Fulham. We actually moved out of Shoreditch just as it became Tech City, which was clever. We're kind of, this is a standard multidisciplinary set of designers and artists specialising in engineering, product design, electronics and software. And we make a load of installations, public installations, private installations, edition pieces, and we sell those through our gallery, Carpenter's Workshop Gallery. So there's me. I'm the one that looks like me. Slight error, and I'm sorry to point this out twice actually now. So Flo in the background with the glasses. He couldn't be here today because we've got stuff on, so it's kind of, we sent one person. Then Hannes, who's not on the website saying who we are, is pretty integral to the site. So we started Random International in 2005, straight out of the Royal College of Art. Before that, actually, our foundation, we went to Brunel University, and there we studied, very similar to the STEM field, we studied product design engineering. So we studied kind of product design, art, engineering, graphic design, all these kind of things, all kind of merged into one lovely, lovely course. And I can prove that I went to Brunel University, because if I did a Google search, Brunel University Product Design, I appear. There I am. Interestingly enough, I appeared just in front of Dev. This is Dev. This is Dev, who sits behind me at work. This guy here is called Paul Turnock. I appear above him, but he's been the product design lead at Brunel University for about 1 million years, and I appear above him. And then Livy, but I couldn't get that picture into my presentation. Bam. So, yeah, that's that. So I'm not going to talk about that anymore. What I am going to talk about today is behavior. Behavior is kind of an ongoing research thread in Random International. We kind of take we have a bunch of different research threads going on, and we kind of work like a university. We have a bunch of designers that work for us, and then we have the directors, and we kind of like dish out these kind of research topics or get them in. And behavior has been one of these kind of threads that's kind of traveled through our work. So today I'm going to talk about 3 different projects that we've done, actually not in the order that we've done them, but trying to link them together as I look back, I suppose. This is, again, you're going to have to bear with me. Jesus. Because I wanted to do something slightly different. I don't want to come up and just say, I did this, and I did this, and I did this, because that's particularly boring. But I kind of took this opportunity to kind of look back at our work, start linking some threads about what it was and what it's all kind of about. And I kind of picked these 3 projects because they have these they look at behavior in different ways. Yeah. So the first project, Swarm. This was, first came up with this project it's actually in 2008, but we only made it in 2010. So it was quite a long process to actually get it into production, because 1, it's quite an expensive piece, and 2, it was kind of a very complex thing. So what I'm going to do for all the 3 projects, I'm going to give you a little background of the project. Just did that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the design process and then more about the behavior about it. Swarm was built from 3 driving forces. And the first is explained in this TV ad. I'm not sponsored by Carling, but at that point, sorry, I'm not being rude. At that point, I watched that on TV, because my main media input is actually TV. I don't read as much as I should, and I should. I probably visit less websites, but my main media input is computer games and TV, actually. But this kind of this idea of flocking was fascinating, and it was a driving force to kind of I wanted to recreate that in some way. Yeah, I'm actually, weirdly, and this is what I've looked at, I've actually just started listening to Richard Dawkins' The Greatest Show on Earth. And I've just gone through to the chapter of where they talk about swarm algorithms, which would have been handy a couple of years ago. So the first driving factor, recreating a swarm. Clever guy, Craig Reynolds, back in like 1980 or something, 1986, started playing around with the concept of simulating bird flocks. And the thing that he did, which no other kind of like programmer or mathematician at the time was kind of concentrating on, was he was looking at localized behavior. So the point of this is that he looked at taking each one of these little birds and giving it very simple behavior that it sees. So the bird, the object, whatever it is, has certain things that it kind of rules in its life. One is separation. It needs to kind of steer near its friends, but kind of a certain distance away. One is alignment. He kind of wants to swim with the friends. And cohesion. He wants to kind of move towards the average of the group. The point of that is that, if you're a bird in a group, you're not going to get eaten by a hawk. Because you're a massive thing, you appear bigger and massive and more scary. So very, very simple behavior, but it's about the behavior of individual objects and then watching it all unfold like together. Yeah. So that was a really interesting aspect. The second driving force was about reducing complexity. This is a project by a guy called Maiwa Denki. It's actually a company called Maiwa Denki, based in Japan. Awesome company. Anybody heard of Maiwa Denki before? One guy. Fucking hell. I brought one along, and I'll play with it later. It's called Bitman. Now, this guy is awesome. He's like a little 8x8, 64 pixel representation of a person. And then you can spin it on its side and it'll get up on its side. And you can move it around and he kind of starts dancing. What's interesting about this is that it's recognizable and it has a character. It has emotion. You kind of attach that emotion to it because it's this. But in all truth and fact, it's just 64 pixels of LEDs switching on and off. Yeah? So it's about kind of like taking that thread through. I've even got in my notes product demonstration, but I left in my bag. Stupid. So to that end, we decided to, we kind of put a peg in the sand, I suppose. And is that the expression? Probably not. And we decided to make a 3D LED cube because, hey, they were the rage at the time. So we started with that, and we decided to at what point can we kind of reduce its complexity, reduce the amount of pixels in this thing, say, but still get the effect and still get the feel of this swarm kind of moving through it. Now I'm going to go on a slight tangent here and talk a little bit about a really, really important part of our process, which is visualization. Look at my lovely visual. And this is kind of this interests me one of the most because at the start of the project, it's one of the ways that we get funding for a project. In fact, there's never been a project to date that we haven't visualized first to actually get it made. And every time we do it, there's not like a pre-stamped, this is how you visualize a thing. We have to invent it, essentially. We have to kind of come up with an idea of how the hell we're going to do this. Because we can have an idea, and then you kind of sit there and go, oh, well, but Similar 4D doesn't have a flocking function. So you kind of have to kind of invent ways of recreating these things. So for example, for Swarm, at the time I was learning processing. One quick fact about that, I started programming when I was at the Royal College of Art, actually. weirdly enough. I studied a little bit of Brunel, but it put me off. But then I kind of took it back up again, and I was introduced to processing, which is it was designed by Ben Fries and Casey Rears back in 2001, actually, at the MIT, and now they've gone off and teaching elsewhere. And it's a programming language based in Java. It's a development library and an online community, and it's essentially a set of libraries to make Java easily accessible. So you can do things like graphic libraries, web, audio, 3D, serial interfaces and things like that. So it allows people to get into programming quickly before having to write all the gumph beforehand. So I wrote a very quick algorithm, kind of based on the Craig Reynolds rule set, essentially, and kind of came up with this, which is, this is a 3D dimensional flocking pattern, kind of running in real time, I suppose, in software. And the slats through, they're kind of essentially like planes. If you kind of, what's the best? It's a bit like Damien when you cut something in half and kind of puts it there, and you can see it's like like an MRI scan, essentially, sections through. So I took sections through the cube, LED cube, in kind of a horizontal way, and then basically from that generated a series of sections, and this one was a section of 12, and I went down in complexity to see. So you can kind of see all the different movies of the different planes, and one of those movies looks like this, say. Yeah? So then I went into Cinema 4D, great little tool, and kind of mapped each one of those sections, you can kind of see with the yellow lines around it, mapped on that movie, and basically that mimicked switching the LEDs on and off to come up with this, which is a very, very simple rendering, and kind of slightly, I wouldn't do it like that now, but that I've learned. But at the time, it was a very, very easy way of kind of reproducing kind of what we wanted and kind of tweaking some things here and then kind of seeing what it was like. And then we kind of did it in inverse as well, inverse mode, which actually kind of seemed a bit more interesting. There was something quite interesting about the flock is moving in a shadow, yeah? Which led to this rendering, which actually got us our commission. There was something interesting for me, there was something really interesting in the space between the objects. You know, there's this kind of, and it works as a triptych as well. It's something arty, I suppose. There was something nice about the fact that this flock, this ethereal thing, went through space, but you kind of filled in the gaps yourself. So this is where I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. We did a lot of design, and then we built it. We decided to, we made like a little, there's something that we love doing as well. We're kind of product designers by nature, and we like making little products, and we almost use these products, these little things, as a material. This is a swarm node. It's got 3 LEDs around the side, a little microcontroller in the middle, and 3 little holes, and they're for brass rod. This is about yay big. And then what we do is we make sticks out of those by soldering. We push long brass rods through them all, and then we solder the LEDs, the nodes on by hand. So it's kind of handmade, which again is something digital and handmade. There's something quite interesting about that. And then we kind of go off and make a bunch of them. I sit there like a mug soldering them all. Make a bunch of sticks, and then hang it, and it's kind of cute. Yeah, so it's quite a stunning piece. But what I want to concentrate on here, because we're kind of narcissists in some way, so we had the algorithm running and it looked pretty, but it wasn't enough. So the third driving force in this process was to not only represent a swarm, but have it respond to you. We wanted to kind of instill a certain reactive, understand or obvious behavior with this thing. So we decided to use audio for this instance. We have done versions where they track you with cameras and things, but this example, we wanted to create a response, an audio response, which made sense. So we wanted it to kind of like do its thing when there's no kind of audio or whatever. And then if you kind of start talking in a room, as if you had one of these above your dining room table, as if, it would kind of get curious and come to you and think about that. And then if you kind of made a clap noise, it would kind of get scared and bound off, which is all lovely. You know, you can kind of talk, wax lyrical about all that kind of stuff. But how do you do that? And this is where I get to the behavior stuff. Got there eventually. Fuzzy logic. See what I did? Fuzzy logic is a way of thinking about modeling. It's a way of thinking about the modeling of imprecise concepts or dealing with information based on perception. So it's not an exact science. It's not like on or off, true or false. Oh shit, 50 minutes. So it's kind of say it's more about modeling feeling. How do you code feeling? For example, what does slow speed, medium speed, or fast speed mean? You know, and how do they perhaps the perception of it changes if you're on a kind of like a motorway or a country road. You know, so with that in mind, for Swarm, we did a similar thing. We looked at what was normal, what was it kind of hanging out. When does it get curious? And then when does it kind of get to panicking? And what's interesting about these curves and these lines is that they intersect at certain points, and maybe, you know, they kind of shift and move, and they're not kind of like exact points, although you could say that's an exact point, but screw you. So to do that, one way of doing it, and there is other fuzzy logic kind of examples of coding and things like that, but it's to do with weighting. But this is essentially the simplest form. If a variable is a property, then do something. So for example, the audio stuff, if the audio level is low, then don't react. If the audio level is medium, then get curious. And then if the audio level is high, then get scared. Yeah? And then all those things are evaluated, and then you can kind of pick the right evaluation. Yeah? But then with this, it's not as simple as that. So we found that if writing this very simple code, and we put that in, what would happen is that we would kind of do it, and then at the slightest noise, it would kind of go crazy or whatever. So we have to change the audio levels where you kind of, each of these audio levels is kind of tunable. But we were finding that at a fair, when we were showing it, say, at Design Miami Basel, because there was such a big noise all the time, we were kind of like, it was never doing anything because the audio level was always a certain level. Or it was always going crazy. So then we had to kind of take into account that the fact that you've got a background noise. Yeah? So then you evaluate that background noise, and then your pseudo logic code becomes, if audio level plus background noise is low, then don't react. Yeah? So this is how the kind of steps of programming kind of happen, and this is kind of how we start kind of creating code, essentially. I want to put a quick shout out to the Humble slider. It's brilliant. Fuzzy logic fuzzy logic by definition, I suppose, in some way, it's designed by hand. It's not a system that learns, although it has learning aspects in it, a bit like our average audio level, say. But it's about fine-tuning, and it's about the designer, the artist, or whatever, fine-tuning. I always kind of do this when I say fine-tuning. It's about kind of, because I have, you know, I've changed the current on motors to kind of fine-tune the noise out. It's about kind of getting in there, and the beautiful thing about software in this instance is that you can fine-tune by moving a slider between one value and another value. And therefore it's about the feel, you know. Another important factor here as well is what does get curious mean and what does get scared mean as well. What do they look like? But I'll show you that in a second. So yeah, fuzzy logic is about kind of fine-tuning things. So this is kind of, check my sliders out. Written something awful on this. So this is kind of like, you have, I love using, this is your attraction threshold. So this is the point at which the audio level is a certain threshold that it starts kind of coming towards you, yeah? And then this is the threshold at which it goes, and gets scared. And then this is like an averaging piece of stuff. Something's making a noise. And then this is to do with the swarm itself. So basically, as we develop our kind of behavioral code, we build these things on top of each other, and we're always testing each one individually and then kind of seeing how they work. So the second one is about how the swarm feels. So we can change how close it gets to its neighbors. We can change how big each fly is, each starling is, say. And then your kind of code. Nice thing about code, I've got to excuse this is kind of, I did it in a really bad way. I filmed my screen because Windows was lame. Each one of these little blobs is one of the swarm voids. And you can see there that you can kind of represent this in 3 dimensions. And in code, there's something interesting about that because it allows you freedom to kind of play and experiment first. Yeah, and that's kind of going through different kind of iterations of it, like an inverse and all this kind of stuff. Blah, blah, blah. So the final outcome kind of looks a bit like this. Yeah. So that's cute. Now, I've realized I've just got to 21 minutes. Stupid keynote. I've got 2 other things to talk about. Do you mind me carrying on? Yeah? Yeah. If you need to leave, just leave. I won't take any offense. This piece is called Audience. This was designed back in 2008, so this actually predates Swarm. And I want you to kind of watch this first very quickly. So let me just can I pause it. Yeah, look at that. Ka-chow. I kind of hear giggles and stuff like that, and it is kind of funny. What is happening is there is a bunch of shapes moving, in film, and that's it. However, as humans, it's impossible for you not to infer your own emotive reaction to it. So maybe the big triangle's a bully, and this little guy is kind of like, and this guy's scared. So the circle's scared, the little triangle is kind of trying to get away. He's trying to stick it up, but he's kind of not. And that's what I read into it. That's how I feel about the piece. I mean, someone might think that the big guy is telling the little guy off, whatever. But it's impossible for you not to put your own emotional response onto those objects. And that's exactly what we wanted to kind of experiment with audience. So the principle behind it is there's a bunch of little guys who are mirrors, they're about this big, that chat to each other. They're kind of like hanging out, they're kind of living their life. And then someone walks in, and they all kind of like get disturbed, and they go, vroom, and they all look at you. And then wherever you go, they're looking at you, they're kind of, it's the same feeling you get into a ye old pub when you go into Dorset. Even the dog looks around. And the concept works if these little guys are believable as guys. So this is the concept video. Again, very important to kind of visualize that. there we go. So yeah, very simple little concept, a bit crazy. So we did a bunch of design, we made a load of prototypes. This was the very first prototype, which kind of worked. You know, we started getting the feel of the size and the movement, and we kind of started choosing the right servo motors, did all the electronics, blah, 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 and then we made it. So I skipped quite a lot of steps there, but it's quite intense. But yeah, so we created this object. Again, it's kind of raw material, this thing. Product design, and then we got things cast, and that's our base, and we did some electronics, and that's the electronics, and then we made a bunch of them, and we tested a bunch of them, and we wrote some software. This software is actually written by a guy called Chris O'Shea. He kind of collaborated on the piece with us, and so this is his software kind of learning how to. It was doing the camera tracking. So here you can see like a bunch of blobs, and they're people. And the audience is kind of like, what an interesting part of this kind of side note is that we had a slider of board. It was a board slider. So if it looked at someone and someone stood still for too long, it would get bored, so it would look at someone else. Yeah? And again, that was one of these kind of fuzzy logic sliders where you had to kind of tweak to feel until it felt like it was bored. And it worked, you know, blah-blah. It did look at people and it kind of moved around. But something was missing in this. It kind of did this, and then we kind of wrote a very simple algorithm about trying to move them, make them kind of move on their own when they're chatting, but it just looked foreign. It looked kind of like these things were kind of on drugs or something. So we wanted to create this feeling of these bunch of guys, a rabble of things, kind of having different personalities and all that kind of stuff. So we kind of looked at elsewhere who do this. And these guys do this very, very well, obviously. Yeah, Pixar get it right because there's like a tireless attention to detail, and everything's pre-scripted. And I've got a fantastic Pixar fact: the average animator at Pixar works for 2 years on a scene lasting 3 minutes long. So there's a lot of work going in. I might have made that up a little bit, but it's something like that. I'm sure I saw it on a Channel 4 program once, and I was searching in Google, and then I just kept on coming up with Wikipedia rubbish. So we decided to do something similar. Go. So these guys, these are chatting. This guy's daydreaming. Oh, ignore the background. This guy's having a sleep. And this guy's lost his contact lens. Yeah. And kind of that, you know, we spent ages trying to get this algorithm right, you know, trying to do it in code. And then we ended up just going, I remember kind of going in on the bus to the Royal Opera House where it was installed first and going, fuck it, let's just animate it. A side note, the first time I wanted to do camera tracking is I wanted to print a t-shirt for an intern saying camera tracker, and have an intern hidden and just pointing his mouse on different people, because that's essentially what you're trying to recreate. You're trying to create a computer algorithm that kind of does what we want to do instinctively, yeah? I got vetoed. Which was lucky because we ended up setting up, and it's now, we've sold 2 editions, and we've got a 3rd one going into our gallery in October, maybe, it's at the end of the slide. And also, this is interesting, this video, of course it is. Look how interesting it is. Because it's not just about like the software that needs kind of fine-tuning and getting right. Every time we set this thing up, we always put them all down, and then look around and then kind of move them around by hand and just kind of go, what does that feel like? Do they feel like a rabble? We don't want them kind of like in square kind of patterns or kind of randomly distributed. It needs to kind of feel right, yeah? And this was nice because it was almost like a corridor. There was kind of like a runway. So it kind of worked. So there it is. Sorry, my videos tend to be quite honest. There's always me chatting in the background saying, stop moving. Pause for dramatic effect. Get great like reflections on the walls and things. Look at that little guy. And we kind of, we designed them intentionally to be kind of like just square mirrors. We got asked stupid questions like, why didn't you make it look like a face? It's like, well, that'd be awful. Come on.
Could you see your reflection in them?
Yeah. So the idea is that when you are the point of interest, you see yourself 64 times. 64, because it's a nice number. But what we didn't anticipate, which is kind of what I'm going on, so that's all modeling behavior, blah, blah, blah. But what was really interesting was the public response to it. They really grew kind of, there was such like a love towards these little creatures, these kind of little guys. And we got some great kind of footage, like this. Now, I didn't pay this guy. This guy did this of his own free will. I just happened to have the camera on my lap at the time. I was kind of filming stuff throughout the day. Loving it. Should have just employed him just to stand there. Yeah. Awesome. So there was something interesting in that I wanted to put my little circles, like you've got your little circles. But mine are like really like rubbish colours. I've also called it moling behaviour. Fail. Moling behaviour, so we're modelling behaviour, obviously. And that was Swarm, and a bit of audience. That's what we thought we were trying to do. But what happened is that there was this kind of, we were deriving behaviour or getting people to react. So there was this kind of social experiment kind of aspect. So we thought, well, we didn't think, this is kind of like me thinking back, so we thought, that's a nonsense. So we have another project which is about a social experiment, which I want to talk about very quickly, and it should only take like 5 minutes, called Rain Room. Rain Room is our first public commission. It's going to be in the Barbican in October, runs through till February, in the curve space, which is this space here. It's a 6 by 16 meter installation that essentially rains. So you walk in and it's completely raining, the entire 6 by 16 meter space. And you walk towards the piece and it stops raining just in front of you, in a kind of circle around you. So you walk in and it stops raining everywhere around you. So it doesn't rain on you. So the idea is that you're kind of protected by a dry bubble and you can walk around the space and not get wet. That's it. That's the principle. I was going to show you loads of development and all that kind of stuff, but I got vetoed. I got told off. So I'm not, but it's going in there. This is the Barbican space, the curve space. A couple of things about this space is that we intentionally, like there was someone there going like, oh no, but you've got to leave enough room around for people to walk around so they're going to just view it. And I was like, nah, screw the people. There's these 2 points here that you can't not go into the installation to get through to the other side. And we've also made it so you can only go through and you have to walk through the entire thing. There'll be like a bouncer at this end. Go back. But what's interesting about this, what will people do in the space? Perhaps, and this is where perhaps people will become exhibitionists, a bit like the guy in pink. Perhaps he'll kind of like, people want to go through and just kind of, look at me, and have like a bunch of onlookers. I think what's interesting about it is that it's going to extract personality types. Perhaps we have inverse mode for annoying kids. Sorry. A bit godly, I'm feeling. Oh, no, I'm not going to do that. Maybe I'll do that. No, I'm not going to do that. Perhaps we're going to have to give people umbrellas to entice them to go in. And then they'll be in there and they'll go, actually, I'm not. Oh, actually, it's fine, and take the umbrella. But how do we kind of entice these people in? What happens at the start of the event when I really want to make it so you walk in and the first person into the exhibition kind of stands in the middle, it's not raining at all. And they stand in the middle of the installation, and then we switch everything on. Kind of like as a water cloud coming towards them, and it kind of zips around them. They go, ah! We've got filtering, just in case there's soiling. Let's disgusting. Stu. Fuck. Oh, and I've sworn as well. Perhaps it's about group dynamics. Group dynamics is really interesting, following the crowd, the first person in, then suddenly everybody. We did an installation recently called Future Self in Berlin. And after the performance, we had these dancers on stage performing with this piece. And then after the performance, they just literally walked off. And no one kind of like said, oh, no, you do it. And it was about the first person kind of having the courage to go up and do something. And then suddenly it got swamped because it was kind of that group dynamic. So I want to show you two very, very interesting videos about group dynamics. And it's called the Ash conformity experiments. I don't know if anybody's heard about these things, but they were done in like the 1950s and 60s. And they are astounding.
The Ash experiment is one of psychology's oldest and most popular pieces of research. A volunteer is told that he's taking part in a visual perception test. What he doesn't know is that the other participants are actors, and he's the only person taking part in the real test, which is actually about group conformity.
The experiment you will be taking part in today involves the perception of line length. Your task will be simply to look at the line here on the left and indicate which of the three lines on the right
Awesome
is equal
Tash.
to in length. So, for example,
The actors have been told to match the wrong lines. The volunteer will be monitored to see if he gives the correct answer or if he goes along with the opinion of the group and gives the wrong answer. In the first test, the correct answer is 2.
1. 1. Two.
Once again, the correct answer is 2.
3. 3.
So, yeah, really interesting kind of experiment, and perhaps this is kind of. I want to show you just one last video, which is again, it's expanding this a little bit, and I know I'm at 36 minutes, but it's Friday, and this is another Ash experiment in the 1950s, and it's awesome.
He looks at his watch, but he's really making an excuse for turning just a little bit more. Now we try it once again. Here's the candid subject. Here comes the candid camera staff. 3 of them at least. And this...
This one's brilliant.
Here's a fella with his hat on in the elevator. First he makes a full turn to the rear and Charlie closes the door. A moment later, we'll open the door, everybody's changed positions. Now we'll see if we can use group pressure for some good. Now, in a moment, on Charlie's signal, everybody turns. Notice, they take off their hats. And now, do you think we could reverse the procedure? Watch.
Brilliant. Yeah. So, yeah. So the fundamental point is that we don't know what's going to happen with Rain Room, and that's kind of interesting. And I think we're going to use it as the point of the piece is it's kind of a social experiment. Yeah. So, if you want to see these things, I suppose, we are, so before the Rain Carpenter's Workshop Go, we're having a solo show which will have Audience and Swarm in it, amongst other works. That's in Paris, and that goes on from September to November. We're in the Swarovski at the Design Museum exhibition from October, I think. And then Rain Room goes on in the Barbican from October to February. So come along. Thank you very much.